Greetings everyone, I'm happy to introduce you to my Arsenal Barbarian on Diablo IV. It's a mix of aggro, overpower and of course swapping weapon. You'll see that it's quite cool to play in the video. I'll start with the skill, and as you see we don't have basic attack in order to generate fury. Of course we have other ways to generate it and I'll explain everything in that video. So first you want to play the double swing and the upheaval associated with the death blow. Each of them have a special weapon as you can see, so make sure to have the right weapon. You'll be using a skill just once and then move to your next skill in order to have the change of weapon for the build to work. You also have this in order to grab enemies, the rallying cry to be unstoppable, and our ultimate when you see if you deal direct damage to an enemy after swapping weapons, it will reduce Iron Maelstrom cooldown by 1 second. So that's the very core of the build. Make sure to always swap your attack in order to have this effect. Then for the gear you have a chance to get Fortify while berserking. You also have Fortify after swapping weapons, and here chance for distant enemies to be stunned. Then you have some healing and the fact that you'll get an additional charge. Also, when you kill an enemy with a death blow, it resets the charges and you'll have the 2 charges available, so it's important to have this passive. I'll go back to this weapon a bit later, and then you have increased damage when you stand still. Increase attack speed when you land a critical strike with core skill. Since you have to, it will be very efficient, and this one, it's a unique one. It's not mandatory but still bring plenty of cool stuff, for example 2 additional chance, slow enemies and increase damage to slowed enemies. So it's not mandatory, but if you have it, it works perfectly with the build. Then you have some fury when you are berserking. It's very important to have this one. You cannot play this build if you don't have this aspect. And after that, increase damage on your weapon mastery after spending 100 fury. Make sure when you have this buff to use the death blow and not the steel grasp in order to have the best damage. Then we have this one increasing damage based on your fury. So I didn't mention this weapon before because it's currently bugged, meaning that you should have an overpowered damage after swapping 10 times your weapons. Unfortunately, if you get hit when you have this buff, it will remove the buff. We don't have info about when it will be patched, but in the meantime you can also play this weapon instead. It will ignite the ground with the upheaval. So this one is quite cool to play, waiting for the fix. Lastly, if you want, you can also play these unique boots. They will cast the ground stop when you have the walking arsenal. The cool thing about these boots is that it will grant you this passive, for example this one reducing the cooldown of our ultimate skill. So you can try them if you want, and otherwise you just keep this passive. For the gems you want life in order to grant more overpowered damage, diamonds for the resistances, and waiting for this bug to be fixed you want to get diamonds in order to have better ultimate skill damage. Once this passive is correctly working, you can swap the diamonds for rubies. For the expertise, you'll want the 200 mace expertise in order to grant you fury and some additional critical strike damage to vulnerable and stunned enemies when you are berserking. For the stats you want strength and willpower, overpowered damage, damage to close enemies, and you can also think about maximum life, cooldown reduction. It will work great with the ultimate and for example 2 damage while berserking. For the skill tree you want first 2 points in order to unlock our core skills. If you want to focus a bit more on overpower, you can also, instead of 2 core skill, play this passive which will grant you an overpower attack after 4 critical strike with bash attacks. Otherwise, you just ignore this and you go for the 2 cores, with this one increasing the duration of berserking and this one the damage of upheaval. Then you have the life here, unstoppable and increased fury. It will help you, especially sometimes on bosses, if you like a bit of fury, and then we'll get to this passive just here, which will grant you damage reduction. After that we have some increased damage, the steel grasps, and the fact that it will grant you berserking. You also have berserking here with the death blow. Then you have increased damage with Fortify over 50% of your maximum life, and will get the ultimate with the cooldown reduction. Make sure to get fury when you swap weapon, it's very important to have this one, and here some healing when you use fury. You have some 2 passive interesting, first one giving you overpowered damage and this one vulnerable damage. Lastly, the K passive, the arsenal. Now for the Paragon setups, you want to get this one, you can also take the additional life just here and the first glyph, increasing your damage with the mace. It will also give you a bit of overpowered damage, and then you want to take these rare passives and unlock the first board with this legendary node. It will grant you Fury when you swap weapons. Then you get this for allied damage, and here you have our next glyph giving you overpowered damage. It's in willpower, so make sure to get the willpower node, and you can get the rare node just here. After that you have the next legendary power. This one is a bit less interesting. It will grant you some fortify when you overpower with your two-handed bludgeoning weapon. So it's not mandatory to take it right now, but you want then to get your glyph just here in order to gain damage while fortified. It's also in willpower, so make sure to get the node and the rare node here. On your way you'll get this one, which will increase damage and overpower damage. Here you have damage while fortified and healthy, and this one for the life. You can also wait a bit to get this one if you want to first unlock the third board. For the third board you have this node increasing your attack speed after doing a critical strike during berserking, and the last glyph just here increasing your damage while berserking, this one being in strength. Make sure to get the rare node. Be careful, this one will work at level 15 with these nodes. Lastly, you'll reach this in order to grant you damage while berserking. Be careful, you don't need to take the berserking direction, so just take the berserking damage, you don't need the extra duration. For the gameplay, you'll want to start with the Death Blow or the Steel Grasp in order to trigger the Berserker. It will start giving you some Fury, and of course you'll also get Fury by swapping weapons. Then you start using your core skills, and it's easy, just use one skill, change to another one, and so on to get the rotation. Make sure to always have your unstoppable buff ready, especially in nightmare dungeons. And with this setup you should have your ultimate ready for each pack of allies. Because when you swap your weapon it will reduce the cooldown of your ultimate, and so when you see a pack of allies make sure to use your ultimate, it will quickly be available again. For bosses or allies it's the same pattern, and you can also use this build with a friend who got some good AoE damage. Thanks for watching this video, and don't forget that you have everything on Diablo 4 on our website dmgaming.eu.